Maya woke up early on her first day at the new company. She took a deep breath as she looked at herself in the mirror, wearing her neatly pressed suit and carrying her bag filled with notes and documents she had prepared. She was both excited and nervous. For weeks, she had been waiting for this day. It was not just any job, it was a chance to prove herself in the corporate world. She wanted to start from the bottom, work hard, and understand how people really treated employees in a company. There was something very special about Maya, something no one at the office knew. She was the only daughter of the CEO, Mr. Harris. But she had decided to keep her identity hidden. She wanted people to see her for her work, not for her name. When she entered the tall glass building, she paused for a moment in the lobby, taking in the polished floors, busy workers walking quickly with files in their hands, and the soft hum of conversations. She smiled politely at the receptionist, signed her name in the register, and collected her visitor badge. The receptionist directed her to the 12th floor, where her department was located. As she stepped into the elevator, she felt her heartbeat quicken. She whispered to herself, "Stay calm, Maya. Just do your best." The elevator doors opened to a brightly lit office space. People were busy typing, talking on phones, and rushing to meetings. She introduced herself to a few colleagues, who greeted her kindly but without much interest. Everyone seemed too focused on their own tasks. She walked over to her assigned desk and began to set up her things when she heard a voice behind her. "So, you're the new one," a man said sharply. Maya turned and saw a middle-aged man in a suit with a strict expression. His nameplate read Mr. Collins, department manager. His eyes scanned her from head to toe in a way that felt more like judgment than welcome. "I hope you're ready to work hard, because we don't have time for slow learners here," he said with no smile. Maya nodded politely. "Yes, sir. I'm ready to give my best." Collins frowned slightly, unimpressed. "We'll see," he muttered before walking away. From that very moment, Maya sensed that her journey in this office would not be easy. Collins was her direct boss, and his coldness was obvious. Still, she reminded herself of her mission. She had come here to learn, to grow, and to understand the struggles of employees. So, she took a deep breath, opened her notebook, and began her first assignment. During the day, she noticed how Collins spoke to others. With senior managers, his tone was sweet and respectful. With his own team, however, he was impatient and rude. He snapped at people for small mistakes and often interrupted them mid-sentence. Maya observed carefully, realizing that many workers kept their heads down just to avoid his harsh comments. At lunchtime, Maya sat quietly in the cafeteria with her small lunchbox. A few colleagues smiled at her but did not invite her to their tables. She was fine with it. She had always been independent, and besides, she wanted to blend in like any ordinary employee. When she returned to her desk, Collins dropped a heavy folder on her table without warning. "Here. Finish these reports by tomorrow morning," he ordered. Maya looked at the thick file. "All of these?" she asked politely. "Yes. Or are you saying you can't handle it?" Collins snapped. "If you want to keep this job, you'd better keep up." Maya kept calm. She smiled lightly and said, "I'll do my best, sir." Inside, she knew this was unfair. Normally, such a large file would be divided among 2 or 3 employees. But Collins wanted to test her, maybe even break her spirit on her very first day. That evening, long after most of the staff had left, Maya stayed at her desk, typing carefully, reviewing numbers, and preparing summaries. The office was quiet, the only sounds were her keyboard clicks and the occasional hum of the air conditioner. Though her eyes felt heavy, she pushed herself forward. She remembered her father's words, "If you want to be a leader, first learn what it feels like to be led." By the time she finished, it was nearly midnight. She stretched her tired arms, closed the file, and placed it neatly on Colin's desk. She didn't want him to think she had left anything incomplete. She then packed her bag and walked out of the empty building under the glowing city lights. The next morning, Collins was surprised to see the finished report on his desk. He quickly scanned it, trying to find errors, but the work was precise and detailed. Instead of praising her, he muttered, "Not bad for a beginner. Let's see if you can keep this up." Throughout the week, Maya kept facing Collins' cold treatment. He interrupted her when she spoke in meetings, dismissed her ideas without listening, and sometimes even mocked her in front of others. Once, when she suggested a new way to organize client data, Collins laughed and said, "Stick to simple tasks. Leave the real thinking to experienced people." The words stung, but Maya did not show it. She smiled, took notes, and continued working quietly. She knew who she was, and she knew her value. She also knew that patience and perseverance were her strongest weapons. Some colleagues began to notice her calm strength. One young man named Daniel whispered to her one afternoon, "You did a great job on that report. Don't let him get to you." Maya smiled gratefully. "Thank you," she replied softly. But Collins continued to underestimate her. To him, Maya was just another ordinary employee, someone he could control and belittle without consequence. What he didn't know was that the young woman sitting quietly at her desk, the one he treated so harshly, was the daughter of the very man who signed his paycheck. Maya went home each day tired but not discouraged. She told herself that this was exactly why she had chosen to work without revealing her identity. She wanted to see how people behaved when they didn't know her background. She wanted to understand the reality her father's employees faced. And now, she was seeing it clearly. There were bosses who lifted their teams, and there were bosses like Collins, who crushed them. Still, she refused to give up. Every morning, she walked into that office with her head held high, ready to face another day. She didn't complain, she didn't argue, and she didn't reveal her secret. She simply worked harder, believing that one day, the truth would come out on its own. And as she sat at her desk, typing quietly while Collins barked orders at others, Maya reminded herself of a simple promise: stay strong. Stay true. Your time will come. Maya returned to work the next week with the same quiet determination. She had already seen enough to know that her journey would not be smooth. Collins seemed to take a strange satisfaction in making her life harder. He never offered her guidance, yet he expected her to deliver perfect results every time. Still, Maya remained steady, because she had a purpose bigger than his behavior. Each morning, when she walked through the tall glass doors of the building, she carried with her a calm smile. Some colleagues began to notice how composed she was, even when Collins snapped at her. While others often felt crushed by his sharp words, Maya seemed almost immune. It was not that his rudeness did not affect her, it did, but she chose not to let him see her pain. She had learned long ago that true strength often showed itself in silence. In team meetings, Collins often used Maya as an example of what not to do. If a report was late, even if she had nothing to do with it, he would glare at her and say things like, "See, this is why new employees slow us down." The room would grow tense, with co-workers glancing at each other uncomfortably. Maya, however, would simply nod and say, "I'll make sure to improve, sir," even if she was not at fault. Her calm replies sometimes surprised her teammates. One afternoon, during a client call, Collins presented data that had several errors. When the client questioned him, he quickly turned to Maya and said, "This must be her mistake. She's still learning." The words hit her like a cold slap. Maya had not even worked on that file, but she chose not to argue in front of the client. Instead, she quickly pulled up the correct data, explained it clearly, and solved the problem with a steady voice. The client was impressed and said, "Thank you, Miss Maya, that was very clear." Collins gave a forced smile, but inside, he burned with embarrassment. As days passed, Collins grew more bitter. He couldn't understand how Maya kept handling pressure so well. Most employees would have either broken down or quit by now, but she stood firm. To punish her further, he began giving her more and more tasks. Sometimes he would leave files on her desk at the very last minute and say, "I want this ready by tomorrow morning." It was unfair, but Maya accepted it without complaint. Late evenings became her routine. While the rest of the office emptied out, she often stayed behind, typing away at her computer. The cleaning staff noticed her. One janitor smiled at her once and said, "You work harder than anyone else here." Maya simply replied, "Thank you. Hard work always pays off." Her consistency slowly began to earn her silent respect. Daniel, the young colleague who had spoken kindly to her before, often stopped by her desk. "You don't deserve the way he talks to you," he said one evening. "But the way you handle it inspires people. Some of us are learning from you." Maya gave him a soft smile. "Thank you, Daniel. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. If I lose my calm, I lose myself. And I don't want that." Word of her quiet strength spread around the office. While Collins continued to mock her, some teammates began turning to her for help with their own tasks. She always offered assistance with patience and kindness, never making anyone feel small. In time, a few even started calling her the real manager behind her back, though no one dared say it out loud when Collins was around. One day, the team was preparing for a major presentation. Collins was supposed to lead it, but he was disorganized. The charts were incomplete, and the summary was poorly written. The team grew nervous because this client was important, and a mistake could cost the company millions. Maya noticed the rising tension. Quietly, she stayed back late that night, reworking the presentation slides, checking the numbers, and preparing speaking notes. She told no one. She did it because she believed in doing her job well, even if she received no credit. The next morning, as the meeting began, Collins strutted into the room as though everything was under control. He started presenting but quickly stumbled when the client asked a tough question about data accuracy. He froze for a moment, then turned to Maya and said sharply, "Do you have the updated figures? Or did you forget again?" All eyes turned to Maya. She calmly opened her laptop and shared the corrected data she had prepared overnight. Her voice was steady as she explained the details, answering the client's questions clearly and confidently. The client leaned back in his chair and said, "Impressive work, young lady. Very professional." For a moment, the entire room was silent. Even Collins could not deny the quality of her work. But instead of praising her, he muttered, "Yes, yes, that's what I trained her for," trying to take credit. Maya simply bowed her head politely, not revealing that she had worked on it alone. After the meeting, whispers spread among the team. Everyone knew it was Maya who had saved the presentation. Daniel caught up with her in the hallway and said quietly, "You carried that meeting. If it weren't for you, we would have lost the client." Maya only replied, "It's not about who gets the credit. It's about the company succeeding." Still, Collins was not pleased. To him, Maya's success was a threat. The more she shone, the more his own flaws became visible. That evening, he called her into his office and said, "Listen, I don't know what game you're playing, but remember this: you're new here. Don't try to outshine me." Maya met his eyes calmly and said, "I'm not trying to outshine anyone, sir. I'm just doing my work." Her steady tone unsettled him. He leaned back in his chair, annoyed that he couldn't shake her confidence. "Fine," he said finally. "Just remember your place." Maya walked out without a word, but inside, she reflected on his warning. He was right about one thing: she had a place. But it was not the place he imagined. It was a place far above him, a truth that would one day come to light. As the weeks went on, Colin's mistreatment only grew sharper. He interrupted her in every meeting, ignored her ideas, and sometimes assigned her meaningless tasks just to waste her time. Yet, Maya's work ethic never wavered. She poured herself into her projects, always finishing them with care. Her father, the CEO, often checked reports from different departments. More than once, he noticed a certain name Maya attached to detailed, flawless work. He didn't reveal to anyone who she really was, but a small smile would cross his face each time he saw her name. He knew his daughter was proving herself in the way she had promised. By now, some colleagues had quietly grown protective of Maya. They didn't dare challenge Collins openly, but they often whispered encouragement to her. "Keep going, you're stronger than him," one said. Another added, "Someday, he'll regret the way he treated you." Maya only smiled and replied softly, "It's okay. Life always reveals the truth at the right time." And so, day by day, the gap between Colin's arrogance and Maya's quiet strength grew wider. He believed he was breaking her spirit, but in reality, she was growing stronger than ever. She was proving not just to him, but to the entire office, that true leadership came not from shouting or belittling, but from patience, humility, and steady perseverance. The storm was building, though no one could see it yet. Collins thought he was in control, but every harsh word he threw at Maya was slowly setting the stage for a revelation that would shake the office to its core. The office was unusually tense one morning. Everyone was preparing for an important client meeting that could decide a multi-million deal. The team had been working on it for weeks, but much of the responsibility fell on Collins, the department manager. As always, he acted as if everything was under control, but in truth, he had not done the preparation carefully. His slides were incomplete, and many of the numbers in the report were inaccurate. Maya noticed the gaps when she reviewed the files, but she stayed quiet, not wanting to embarrass her boss. Still, something inside her told her to prepare a backup. Late into the night before the meeting, she stayed at her desk, checking figures, correcting mistakes, and creating a clean set of slides. She didn't tell anyone. She simply wanted to be ready if things went wrong. The next day, when the clients walked in, the atmosphere was heavy with pressure. Everyone knew how important this deal was. The room was filled with executives, assistants, and even a few interns who had come to observe. Collins greeted the clients with a wide smile, shaking their hands firmly. "Welcome," he said, trying to sound confident. "You'll be very impressed with the work my team has done under my leadership." Maya sat quietly near the corner of the table, holding her laptop. She knew this was Colin's moment to shine or to stumble. The presentation began. At first, Collins spoke smoothly, clicking through slides. But when the client asked a question about recent performance numbers, Collins froze. He looked at his paper notes, shuffled nervously, and then turned his eyes toward Maya. "You have that data, don't you?" he asked sharply, as if blaming her in front of everyone. "I told you to prepare it." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had not been officially asked to do it, but thankfully, she had prepared. Calmly, she stood up, connected her laptop to the projector, and said in a steady voice, "Yes, I do. Let me show you the updated figures." The room grew silent as she explained the numbers with clarity and confidence. She pointed out trends, highlighted opportunities, and even suggested a practical solution to one of the client's challenges. The clients leaned forward, clearly impressed. One of them smiled and said, "This is excellent work. Very professional." Everyone in the room turned their eyes toward Maya. For a brief moment, she felt the weight of their admiration. She could sense that some of her colleagues were secretly proud of her. Daniel, sitting near the back, gave her a small nod of encouragement. Collins, however, looked uncomfortable. His smile was tight, and his face showed frustration. Instead of acknowledging Maya's effort, he quickly said, "Yes, this is what I trained her for. She still has a long way to go, but she is learning." Maya didn't argue. She simply bowed her head politely and returned to her seat. But the clients weren't fooled. They could clearly see who had carried the meeting. After the presentation ended, the clients shook hands with everyone. One of them even told Maya directly, "You have a bright future. Keep it up." She thanked them softly, her eyes shining with quiet pride. When the room emptied, Collins turned to her with narrowed eyes. "Next time," he said coldly, "don't try to take the spotlight. Remember, I'm the manager here." Maya looked at him calmly. "I wasn't trying to take the spotlight, sir. I was just doing my job." Her simple words unsettled him even more. He didn't reply. He just walked out of the room, leaving an air of bitterness behind. That evening, instead of thanking her, Collins punished her. He dropped a pile of files on her desk and said, "Stay late and clean this up. Since you seem to enjoy working so much, let's see how well you handle it." Maya glanced at the heavy stack of papers. She could have refused, but instead, she nodded. "I'll take care of it." She stayed late again, the office empty except for her soft typing and the distant sound of the janitor's cleaning. Though her body was tired, her mind was calm. She reminded herself why she was there, not to seek praise or rewards, but to learn and to understand what life was like for ordinary employees. Over the next few days, the story of the client meeting spread quietly through the office. People whispered about how Maya had saved the day. A few even started to admire her openly. "She's sharp," one colleague said. "Did you see the way she handled that question?" Another replied, "Yes, and she didn't even look nervous. She's stronger than she looks." Maya heard the whispers but didn't let them change her. She continued working with the same humility. She never bragged, never complained, and never exposed Collins for the way he treated her. One afternoon, as she was heading to the cafeteria, Daniel walked beside her. "I don't understand you," he said honestly. "Most people would have fought back by now. But you just keep smiling." Maya looked at him thoughtfully. "Sometimes the best answer is silence. If I argue, it only makes things worse. But if I stay calm, the truth shows itself without me saying a word." Daniel nodded slowly. He didn't know her secret, but something told him she was not ordinary. Meanwhile, Collins became more insecure. The more Maya proved herself, the more threatened he felt. He began snapping at her for the smallest things: misplaced papers, a phone call she missed while in the restroom, even the way she organized her desk. Nothing she did was ever good enough for him. Yet, Maya continued to surprise him. No matter how much pressure he put on her, she never broke. Her quiet strength unsettled him more than open defiance ever could. The turning point came during another client review. Collins had promised to prepare a summary document, but once again, he hadn't done it properly. When the client noticed the gaps, he immediately tried to blame Maya. She was supposed to finalize it, he lied. But before he could continue, Maya calmly pulled out the complete summary she had worked on. She handed it to the client with a polite smile and explained the details. The client looked impressed and said, "This is exactly what we needed. Thank you, Maya." The room fell silent. Collins' face turned red. Everyone knew he had lied. But Maya didn't expose him. She simply said, "I'm glad I could help." After the meeting, her colleagues began treating her with a new kind of respect. They saw her not just as a hard-working employee but as someone with real leadership qualities. Even without authority, she carried herself like a true leader: calm, thoughtful, and always ready to step up when needed. But Collins only grew more bitter. That evening, he stormed into his office and muttered to himself, "Who does she think she is? Acting like she runs the place." He had no idea how close to the truth he was. At home that night, Maya thought about everything that had happened. She knew she could have exposed Collins many times. She knew she could have revealed her true identity and ended his mistreatment instantly. But she chose not to. She wanted him and everyone else to reveal their true character first. Only then would her identity matter. She looked out the window at the city lights and whispered softly, "Patience, Maya. The time will come. Just keep walking." And so, as Collins dug himself deeper into arrogance and lies, Maya continued her journey with humility and strength. The office didn't know it yet, but a storm was building, and soon, the truth would come crashing down in a way no one could ignore. The office buzzed with unusual excitement one Monday morning. The rumor had spread like fire: the CEO, Mr. Harris, was coming for a surprise visit. Everyone straightened their desks, polished their shoes, and rehearsed polite smiles. For many employees, it was a rare chance to be seen by the top leader of the company. For Maya, however, it meant something deeper. Her heart raced at the thought of seeing her father in the same office where she worked as just another employee. She wondered how he would react when he saw her sitting among the staff. Collins, of course, was the most nervous. He walked quickly around the office, shouting small instructions. "Fix those reports. Make sure the conference room is spotless. And you," he pointed at Maya, "don't say a word unless you're asked to. Understand?" Maya nodded calmly, hiding a smile. She knew her father well enough to know he didn't care for showmanship. He cared about character. But Collins, unaware of her identity, was desperate to appear perfect. By mid-morning, the elevator doors opened, and the CEO stepped out. Mr. Harris walked with quiet authority, his suit crisp, his expression kind yet firm. The entire floor went silent for a moment before breaking into polite greetings. "Good morning, sir," "Welcome, sir," voices rang out. Collins rushed forward, almost stumbling, to shake his hand. "Mr. Harris. What an honor to have you here. I'm Collins, the department manager. I've been running this team with great results." Mr. Harris gave him a polite nod but did not linger. His eyes scanned the room, observing the employees. He noticed nervous smiles, stiff postures, and the obvious tension that often came when a boss walked in. Then, his gaze fell on Maya. For a brief moment, his eyes softened, but he gave no sign of recognition. Maya bowed her head respectfully, silently greeting her father without words. Collins quickly pulled Mr. Harris into the conference room. "Please, let me show you some of the great work my team has done," he said eagerly. The staff followed, filling the chairs. Maya sat at the side, her laptop ready, her heart beating fast. Collins began the presentation. He boasted about projects, exaggerated numbers, and even claimed credit for ideas that Maya and others had worked on. He spoke loudly, his hands waving, as if trying to fill the room with his importance. Mr. Harris listened patiently, but his eyes occasionally drifted toward the employees, studying their reactions. He noticed how some looked down, uncomfortable, each time Collins took credit for things they had clearly contributed. Halfway through, a senior client entered the room, asking about a project report. Collins turned pale. The report had errors, and he hadn't corrected them. In a panic, he quickly looked toward Maya and said, "Maya, why don't you explain this? Since you've been learning under my guidance." His tone was sharp, as if challenging her. Maya stood slowly, feeling dozens of eyes on her. She connected her laptop and pulled up the corrected report she had prepared. With calm confidence, she explained the data, answered the client's questions, and suggested improvements. The client nodded in approval. "Very well presented," he said warmly. For the first time, Mr. Harris allowed himself a small smile. He had always known his daughter's ability, but seeing her prove it in front of others filled him with pride. The meeting continued, but it was clear to everyone that Maya's work stood out. When it ended, the room applauded politely, though the applause was more for her than for Collins. Collins, however, refused to acknowledge it. Instead, he laughed loudly and said, "That's my training paying off. She's still new, but I'm shaping her into something useful." Maya remained quiet, her face calm. She didn't need to defend herself. She knew the truth, and she knew her father knew it too. When the meeting ended, Mr. Harris stood and addressed the room. "I'm proud of the talent I see here," he said in a steady voice. "Good work comes from teamwork, respect, and honesty." His eyes moved across the room, finally resting on Maya. "And sometimes, real talent shines even when it's hidden." Collins clapped loudly, pretending to agree. Then, as Mr. Harris prepared to leave, he suddenly stopped. Turning back to the employees, he said, "There's something I want everyone here to know." The room went silent. Maya's heart skipped. She knew what was coming. Mr. Harris walked over to Maya, who sat quietly at her desk. With a gentle smile, he reached out and pulled her up to stand beside him. Placing a proud hand on her shoulder, he said clearly, "This young woman is not just one of your colleagues. She is my daughter." The room froze. Mouths dropped open. Chairs creaked as people shifted in shock. No one had expected it. Maya bowed her head slightly, her cheeks warm, but her posture calm. Colin's face turned pale. He stuttered, "Daughter? Your daughter?" Mr. Harris nodded firmly. "Yes. My only daughter. She joined this office without revealing who she was because she wanted to work like everyone else. She wanted to learn, to understand, and to grow. And what I have seen is extraordinary." He turned to Maya with a father's pride. "You've proven yourself with patience, humility, and strength." The silence in the room was thick. Then, whispers began. "She's the CEO's daughter. No wonder she was so calm. That explains everything." Collins was trembling. Sweat formed on his forehead. He looked around desperately, hoping for support, but every pair of eyes avoided his. He tried to speak. I didn't know. I thought she was just..." Mr. Harris's expression hardened. "You thought she was just another employee, and so you mistreated her? Is this how you treat all of my staff when you think no one is watching?" Collins opened his mouth but no words came. His arrogance, once so loud, was now broken into silence. The other employees sat still, shocked but secretly relieved. At last, the truth had come out. The woman who had handled insult after insult with calm dignity was not only a colleague but the daughter of the most powerful man in the building. Maya stood quietly beside her father, her heart steady. She had never wanted special treatment, but in this moment, she felt proud. Not because her identity was revealed, but because she had proven herself before it was. As the weight of the truth filled the room, everyone knew Colin's time of power was over. The man who had laughed at her, insulted her, and treated her unfairly had finally been unmasked not by force, but by his own choices. The office remained silent after the shocking revelation. People were frozen in their chairs, their eyes shifting between the calm face of Maya and the stern expression of Mr. Harris. Some still could not believe what they had just heard. The young woman they thought was an ordinary new hire, the one they saw working late nights and enduring constant scolding, was actually the CEO's daughter. Collins felt his knees weaken. His mind raced, replaying all the harsh words he had thrown at Maya, the files he had dumped on her desk, the insults he had made in front of the team. Each memory cut deeper into him now that he understood who she really was. His pride, which had carried him for years, now felt like a heavy stone dragging him down. Mr. Harris broke the silence with a voice that was calm yet firm. "This office is supposed to be a place of respect, a place where every worker feels valued. But what I have seen and heard troubles me. Leadership is not about shouting, blaming, or taking credit for others' work. Leadership is about lifting others, guiding them, and treating them with dignity." Collins swallowed hard, trying to speak. "Sir, I didn't realize." Mr. Harris raised a hand, stopping him. "That is the problem. You didn't realize because you didn't care to look. Maya was not the only one you mistreated. I have heard from others too. The fear in this room is enough proof." His eyes scanned the employees, many of whom lowered their heads. The weight of the truth pressed on Collins. He tried to gather courage. "Please, sir, give me another chance. I can change." His voice shook as he spoke, a far cry from the confident tone he once used to control his staff. Maya, standing beside her father, looked at Collins quietly. For weeks, she had endured his insults, his arrogance, his attempts to break her spirit. Now she saw him humbled, begging for mercy. She could have spoken harshly, but that was not her way. Instead, she said softly, "Everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are. Not because of their position, not because of their background, but simply because they are human. That is what I hoped to see here. But instead, I was treated as if I had no worth." Her words were not loud, but they carried a power that filled the room. Several employees felt their eyes sting with emotion. They had lived under Collins' harshness for years, and now someone was finally saying aloud what they had silently carried in their hearts. Mr. Harris turned to Collins again. "You are no longer fit to lead this team. As of today, you are relieved of your position as manager. You may step down immediately." The words struck like thunder. Collins staggered back, his face pale. He opened his mouth to argue but saw the eyes of every employee fixed on him, not with sympathy, but with relief. For once, no one stood by him. Even his longtime allies avoided his gaze. With heavy steps, he picked up his bag and walked out of the office, the door closing behind him like the final line of a long, bitter chapter. A long silence followed. Then, Mr. Harris looked around the room and spoke gently. "Each one of you deserves a workplace where respect is not optional but expected. Maya did not come here as my daughter. She came as an employee, just like you. And she showed what true strength looks like, not through anger or revenge, but through patience and excellence. Let her story be an example." Maya lowered her eyes, feeling both proud and humble. She had never wanted her father to step in this way, but she knew it was necessary. The culture of fear had to end. That afternoon, the office atmosphere felt lighter than ever before. People who had once kept their heads down began smiling, speaking more openly, and even approaching Maya with genuine warmth. Daniel walked over and said with a grin, "I knew there was something special about you. But this? I never guessed." Maya laughed softly. "I didn't want anyone to guess. I just wanted to be seen for my work, not my name." Another colleague added, "You've earned our respect, Maya. Not because you're the CEO's daughter, but because you showed us how to stand tall without shouting." Those words touched her deeply. That was exactly what she had hoped for. In the days that followed, changes swept through the department. A new manager was brought in, someone chosen not for arrogance but for fairness and skill. The new leader valued teamwork, encouraged open ideas, and made sure every employee felt included. It was as if the office had been given fresh air after years of being shut in a dark room. Maya continued her work with the same dedication as before. She didn't use her identity to demand special treatment. She sat at her same desk, worked on the same projects, and greeted her colleagues with the same quiet smile. But now, the respect she received was genuine. People sought her advice, trusted her judgment, and valued her presence. Her father, Mr. Harris, occasionally visited the department, not as the all-powerful CEO, but as a father proud to see his daughter earning her place. He never interfered in her work, never gave her shortcuts. Instead, he encouraged her to keep proving herself. One evening, as the office lights dimmed and employees began leaving, Maya stayed behind for a moment, looking around at the place that had tested her patience and revealed her strength. She thought about her journey, the late nights, the unfair blame, the silence she had kept when she could have shouted back. It had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Daniel approached her with a smile. "Heading home soon," she said. "Just thinking about everything that's happened." He nodded. It's strange. This place feels different now. More alive. And it all started because you didn't give up. Maya smiled warmly. Sometimes change begins quietly, with small steps. You don't need to fight loudly to make a difference. You just need to stay true to yourself. As she walked out of the building that night, the city lights sparkled around her. She felt lighter than ever before. She knew her journey was far from over, but she also knew she had already made an impact. She had shown her colleagues that strength could be quiet, respect could be powerful, and truth always found its way to the surface. And as for Collins, his name quickly faded from the office. Few spoke of him, except as a reminder of how arrogance and cruelty could never stand for long. His departure became a lesson not just for that department but for the entire company. Maya's story spread quietly through the hallways, whispered with admiration, the young woman who had been mistreated, who endured with grace, and who turned out to be the CEO's daughter. But for Maya, the title was never the point. What mattered most was that she had proven herself as Maya, not as a daughter of power, but as a worker with integrity. Her journey had taught everyone a truth they would never forget: respect is not given because of position, it is earned through character. And true character never hides, even when the world tries to push it down.